Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this webinar this morning. My name's David Weston from Hospitality Today, and I also chair the UK Bed and Breakfast Association, and actually some years ago ran a B&B for a decade or so, so I'm aware of a lot of the issues that accommodation owners have in running small businesses. And this webinar is for people who run hospitality businesses and designed to help you with practical advice and guidance about payment systems. We're going to avoid being too technical today, as this webinar is for business owners and managers, including small business owners, which most are in the hospitality sector. And just on practical points, this webinar is being recorded, so it will be available to watch afterwards for people who didn't catch it all or want to watch it again or weren't able to join us this morning. So everyone who's registered by email will automatically receive an email from us with the links to where you can see the webinar again, and any other information, answers to questions that we haven't been able to answer during the webinar itself. So I'm really pleased today to be joined by two experts, one from one of the leading payments providers, Worldline, and another panelist from one of the leading PMS providers for the small accommodation sector in the UK. And I'll get them to introduce themselves. So firstly, Kimberley, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So good morning all, and thank you for being here today. My name is Kimberley Hoevers. I work for Worldline in the role of Global Key Account Manager Hospitality. I'm doing that for 4.5 years now, and I'm very happy to be here today with you. I don't know if you are familiar with Worldline, but maybe Ingenico Group or Six Payment Services rings a bell on your end. Both companies are part of the Worldline group since a few years, and I can, well, shortly summarize what we do and what we are. So we are good in payments, and we're doing this for almost 50 years. And we're doing this for a lot of different companies throughout the world. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thanks, Kimberley. And Ian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Indeed, thank you, David. Hello, Kimberley. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. So my name's Ian Hardwick. I'm the Business Development Director at eviivo, based in London. I'm decked with Union Jacks at the moment in preparation for the Jubilee. We provide online booking and property management systems to independent accommodation providers. So we work with around 20,000 properties of all shapes and sizes all around the world, particularly UK, France, US, Germany, Italy, everywhere really, from boutique hotels, guest houses, cottages, apartments, pubs and restaurants with rooms, shepherd's huts, yurts, anything of the huge and wonderful diversity of independent accommodation that we have everywhere. So eviivo's got many years experience of building and enhancing our eviivo suite product, so that and we fully understand the needs of independent accommodation providers, including areas like we're going to talk to today around pricing and payments, basically handling everything to do with all aspects of the booking process, selling your rooms online, marketing your business online, taking payments, looking after guests, etc. So we look forward to talking about that today.
Thanks very much, Ian. So for a hospitality business, as any other kind of business, how you get paid is absolutely crucial. And in hospitality, the customer contact points are more complex than for most businesses, where a customer might be generally purchasing one single item in one transaction. So your payment management system and payment processor must be up to that task in every area to give you the edge as a business. Ian, to sort of set the scene, can you briefly take us through the customer journey for an accommodation business as an example, and showing the different payment points?
Yeah, certainly. Well, there's many. As you say, it's not just like buying a single item, buying a pair of shoes or something in the shop. It's really a or can be a quite drawn out incremental purchase that people are making when they're buying rooms or cottage online. So initially, when they first making their booking, there should be an initial check that the payment card that's being used is valid. So it's very easy to transpose a couple of digits when you enter in your card number. Equally, there could be a bit of intent there, people not wanting to put in a correct card number, or potentially even fraudulent number to secure a booking. So the first touch point really is that sort of just making sure that the card is valid and belongs to who it should do. And then, depending on how far in advance the booking is from the date of the stay, and depending on the property's deposit policy, there might be a pre-authorization to check that funds are available to pay for that. So that's not taking money, but it's just making sure that that money exists in the person's account. Or if it's close to the stay, or depending on your initial policy, you might have a pay 10% upfront, 50%, 25% upfront. So there might be that first payment being taken then to secure the booking. Then as the booking window changes and the stay date nears, then again, there could be a deposit if you hadn't taken one in the first place, or you might have a tiered deposit policy where you pay 10% to start with, 50% within 2 weeks or 48 hours or something like that. Just taking that deposit, or maybe taking a full payment in advance for the booking. Kind of depends on the hotel's policies, really. Assuming that something's been taken, and the stay hasn't taken place, the possibility of a cancellation. So maybe there needs to be a refund. So that's another touch point. And then, assuming everything's gone well and you haven't had any cancellations, then you've got the guest arriving. So there's then potentially payment on arrival for the room, any extras that they choose to take when they get there for check-in. They might want to take the breakfast option or sign up for the gym membership for the duration of their stay. Then there's any purchases they might make while they're there, maybe things in the bar, the restaurant, activities you might provide if there's tours or wine tasting in the evening or things like that. So that's more action. Then when the guest departs, there's payment of any remaining balance if it's payment on departure. And then that's likely the end of the process, unless there's things like you might need to refund a damage deposit. So again, you could have taken that when the guest checked in or in advance. So hopefully you're refunding that, or charging any additional fee if there's extra cleaning to be carried out, or people have been smoking in the room or anything they shouldn't have been doing. So it's a kind of it really is an incremental process, and it's not just a one-off transaction. So you need to make sure that at all of those points it's as seamless as possible for you and also for your guest. And it can be quite a complex process.
Yeah, thank you. And that gives us a good picture of how that journey takes place and how many contact points there are for payments, and how you're at a disadvantage if you're trying to use an old-fashioned payment system where you have, for instance, just one single terminal doing it manually. You really need a system, a combination of payment processor and a property management system, which allows you to cope with all those complexities you've just taken us through.
Not everyone will have all of those instances, but it's quite easy to see how you could have that.
Yes.
And that might help your business run more smoothly. So, you are going through each of those processes, but you absolutely don't want to be remembering to have to do that every guest that you have.
Yes. And if you're not in a position to charge extras, for instance, after somebody's left, they've incurred a cost, and you're not able to do it, then you as a business are going to lose out on that. So thank you for that. And that's given us a position, a context of the payments complexity in an accommodation business, as an example. Kimberley, can you tell us what's sort of been changing in recent years in the demands of guests as far as payments are concerned?
Yeah, sure. So I think that when it comes to payments, the demands of guests, they have really changed over the past years. And this is something which was already in place before the pandemic. And what guests are really doing is looking for a way to pay that works best for them. And that can be a lot of different ways. So let's say what Ian just said is that it can be that the guest maybe makes a reservation on the website of your hotel, and they can either go for making just a guarantee or doing a direct payment. And when they go for the guarantee only, they can maybe go to the hotel, and on the day of arrival, they can do the payment or the check-in on the kiosk. But it can also still be on a traditional reception desk, because in my opinion, you really need to look at two different groups, because you have on one end the early adapters, which are people that really like new innovations. They love to pay with a wallet, or maybe with a bracelet, or maybe with an app. And you are also still dealing with elderly people, and the elderly people, they have a hard time with getting used to new ways of paying. They like to stick to what they are already familiar with. So what you need to really look for is some sort of a middle ground for your guests, because we must not forget that even from the elderly people, there's still a lot of revenues coming in for the hotels. So you can think of what I just said, so that in the hotel reception, you have a combination of everything. So on one hand, you maybe have a kiosk where the early adapters can go to make the reservation or check in and do the payment. But there can then also maybe be a host or hostess, which can help people which are a little bit older with the self-service check-in kiosk, and maybe answer their questions if there are any. Because even because of the pandemic, we had this hygiene which became more important than ever before. People still like personal attention, maybe different than what it was before the pandemic, but they still like to have something on, or someone on which they can fall back if they want to. So they don't want to step in a hotel where there's no one that can welcome them. Even, just this simple smell or just a hello can be something very important, or something which really adds values to the guest experience. And then maybe to close my my answer on this, I think also, and that's very interesting to say, because you of course have also the leisure and the business travelers, and I wear both hats because within my role I travel a lot, but I also like to go on holidays. And also I would say that there's also a split between these two groups, because business travelers, and I can really say it's the truth, when they arrive in a hotel after a long journey, they want to go to the hotel room as soon as possible. So for them, maybe the check-in on a mobile app is sufficient enough. They don't want to say hi to someone at the reception desk. But for me, when I wear the hat of a leisure traveler and I go to Turkey, I'm a little bit used to maybe queuing at the hotel reception, waiting a little bit longer before you can go to your room. So also there, it's very important to just have this middle ground so that you can really answer to the wishes and needs of all your different types of guests.
Yeah, I agree, Kimberley. I think from a leisure travel point of view, there is that time between arrival and sort of going to your room, which is a time of adjusting to those new surroundings. And I think you never quite want to go from one to the other seamlessly, not in my experience, because you want to sort of make sure, well, okay, well, the reception's there, restaurant's there, and just sort of work that out. And having that face-to-face interaction, I think, is really important, certainly for a large number of people. Maybe for the regulars, they don't need to do that, but I think that's a worthwhile way of looking at it.
Yeah, and being able to do both kinds of check-in is ideal for the business, isn't it? Because then you allow those regular guests or business travelers to just go straight to their room, use a kiosk or whatever, go straight to their room, and that gives your front of house team, or you as the owner, more time to spend with those people who do want to interact with you face to face and talk when they arrive. And you can chat to them about what they're going to do in their stay and all that kind of thing. So you can treat them both in different ways as they want to be treated.
Yeah,
it's an opportunity to upsell as well. So if the room only rate, but then you tempt them with the €10 breakfast, then that's when they can see the dining room and they can see the menu, and they didn't really want to book it online because there wasn't enough information. But now you think, actually, well, I will do the gym or something like that.
Yeah. And with the payment system and integrated systems we're talking about, you can do the upsell both ways. I mean, face to face, or with the kiosk check-in, that can allow upselling to a higher category of room or whatever as well.
Yeah, and I think even now, mainly after the pandemic, for hoteliers, it's very important to generate as much revenues as possible because we missed out on a lot over the past 2 years. So you cannot, eliminate hotel-like guests, different types of guests, because you're not having a solution for them to come into the hotel and maybe make a payment. So what I tried to say is that you cannot eliminate different or specific types of groups in the hotel. If you only make your hotel feasible for business travelers, then you maybe miss out on revenues from leisure travelers, which also like to come to your hotel, because then they will go to the hotel of one of your competitors, and then you just miss out on revenues.
Yes, that's a good point. Yes, it's always good to have a balance, isn't it? You don't want to have it too business orientated and alienate leisure travelers, or the other way around. And they give you a balance anyway in most situations where you can get weekend and midweek occupancy and all those other things. So that's good. So we've heard about demands of guests for payments changing. Ian, how much do you think, or how have the demands and needs of hospitality businesses been changing recently?
Well, Kimberley was talking just then about and guest demands have certainly been driving change, but I think the needs of the providers are as well. So things like contactless check-in, we sort of see that from a guest point of view, but actually if you're handling lots of guests coming to the front desk, as a provider, having things like contactless check-in are going to be good for you post-COVID, or as a result of COVID. And we're also seeing that providers want to spend less time in the office and things like that. We've recently released an app that's been really popular. Most of our customers have downloaded it. Just gives them a bit more time away from their desk. We're now used to not going into the office all the time, and that should apply in hospitality where possible. So there's sort of been human needs driving change, but also that technology sort of enabling and encouraging that. We're seeing lots of automation, so things like automated guest communication going out when someone makes a booking to confirm the booking and give them more information, and payments are benefiting from that as well. So it's really important that you've got payments integrated into your PMS so you can manage that properly. Your property management system is integral to what how you run your business, and it should be your channel manager, work with your website, all of your back-end systems. So if you've got an EPOS for managing your restaurant and bar bills, if you're feeding out to your accounting software, then the tech all sort of needs to fit together, and that's driving that. You should be able to pre-authorize, charge, record, and reconcile all your payments on your system. So the technology exists to do that. And to go back to Kimberley's point, to allow guests to pay sort of how they want and when they want, and to be able to offer the correct options that they expect. Now, we know that there's still properties that aren't bookable online, and to me that's very anachronistic. But similarly, that when you see places where you can't pay online, I think that's rapidly becoming something that people aren't expecting. If you're looking at something online but then you can't pay, I think that's something that the market is getting used to, sort of being able to pay a certain amount, or is being expecting to pay a certain amount up front. And if you've got a system that doesn't support that, I think you're not really meeting consumer expectations as well as not helping your business.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, consumers generally are more used, especially through COVID, where we had this huge increase in online commerce, which had been growing anyway, of course, but it's a massive acceleration of it. People are used to very easy payment on sites like Amazon, and they tend to try and to expect convenience of payment in all things they do, including booking accommodation or a restaurant or a spa or whatever it is. So thanks for that, Ian.
Yeah, it's just making sure that you're giving people the options to pay, and the expectation, I think, is that people can pay. I put somewhere recently, and I had to do a bank transfer, and I found it quite stressful, to be honest, because I found the property on an online travel agent, but then had to. I think I might have contacted them directly, but I couldn't do everything there in one go. I had to sort of go through lots of hoops, and they were quite relaxed about it. But I felt until I'd paid something, I hadn't secured anything, so my whole day was at risk. And I prefer to be able to say, yeah, it's available. Well, I've paid at least something, and that's now mine. And then
a bank transfer is quite scary, isn't it? Because you've got to get it right. If you make some mistake, money could go the wrong place. You're not, the consumer's not protected. It means sort of going offline and fiddling about with things, doesn't it? Whereas consumers like to sort of click on a link or press a button and it's done.
You're talking quite large numbers, quite large money. I mean, this was over €1,000, I think. And and when you go to do it, your bank says, "Are you sure? Are you really sure? If you do this,
it is scary."
Like, well, maybe I need to go back and say, "Well, look, can I transfer £10 or €10 first?" And then, that makes me feel uncomfortable. Whereas if it's all sort of within the system, I think it's a much more confident building way of doing stuff.
Yeah, and it feels like you're doing some steps back instead of steps forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. Kimberley, there's a lot of jargon in this industry, as with all others. One sort of buzzword we've heard about is omnichannel. Can you explain that and talk us through omnichannel and how it will help our businesses?
Yeah, sure. Well, I must say that when I started working within Worldline, I heard a lot about omnichannel, but in my understanding, it was only just connecting the dots of the different payment platforms you're working with into one. But there's actually more to it. So it really means that you are just available on all different channels where the guests really expect you to be present. So let's say that you are available or active or present on social media. You have the website of the OTAs. You're maybe using WhatsApp for Business, which is also a very, very popular tool at the moment, or other different platforms like Twitter or whatever you can think of. And then this can also be, for instance, TripAdvisor. So what is very important within omnichannel is that you're there, and let's say that guest leaves a reference on the website of TripAdvisor, and the reference can be good or bad, right? So in both situations, you really need to comment on the reference. It's very important that you show that you're interested, that you're maybe there to solve a problem. So that's on one hand. And then on the other hand, when it comes to omnichannel, you can also think of this example. Let's say that you have a guest that makes a reservation on the website of your hotel and he's using his laptop. Maybe through the booking process, he can create a guest profile, which you see more often happening now on just the website of the hotels. There's coming something in between. He needs to go to work or maybe to the dentist, and he decides to just abort the reservation. Then maybe he has the app installed on his mobile device from your hotel. And then with the app, he can finalize the booking. So this is also a very good example of omnichannel. And what is very good to keep in mind is that a guest normally goes through 4 different touch points before they really finalize their stay in your hotel. So that's something to bear in mind at all times. And I think it's just very important to conclude that that a hotel just needs to be, or a hotelier just needs to be present for the guests, because that's the most crucial thing.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that.
You're
and
welcome.
what do you think are the key elements then for key takeaways in terms of omnichannel?
Yeah, so I think it's very important that you're smartphone friendly, sorry. Because, well, nowadays we almost all use a smartphone, so it's very important that your website is also compatible to be used on a mobile device. And furthermore, you really need to invest in data management, because we all know that with data, you can do a lot of things, and you can also make your guests feel special. So let's think about, you use this data, you know that Peter really likes to come in summer. And based on this data, you can give him personalized marketing for, I don't know, a promotional thing in the summer, like a discount on a nice package with cocktails, or I don't know, a nice trip to a lovely place during his holiday. And then the most important thing here, and that's something which all companies should do, is really prioritize the guest experience. The guest experience. So the most important thing is to focus on the guest, base yourself on their wishes and preferences, and then translate this into the guest experience, so that you really make something where the guest feels at home, so that he really likes to come back as well to your hotel. And then, as just said during the part about omnichannel, it's very important to just engage with your guests throughout all channels.
Yeah, and as with any marketing, making it as easy as possible to pay for anything is going to help your business, isn't it? It's going to encourage people to spend more there.
Yes.
The easier it is.
Yes.
Which is what it's all about, helping your business and making more sales, more money.
Yes.
Thanks for that. Yeah, Kimberley, that's great. And we talked earlier about security of payments and that how scary direct transfer is and things like that. Ian, we've all heard a lot about, and much more recently, about PSD2 and how it's impacted hotels when taking payments. Can you just explain that briefly and expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an acronym that everyone's getting familiar with now, isn't it? And it stands for Payment Services Directive, a revised one, hence the 2. And simply, it's a legal framework aimed at making online payments more secure. So it impacts the way consumers buy anything online. It's not just to do with hospitality. It's most purchases. And a customer's bank now has the right to request additional checks when someone is buying something online. They want to authenticate the legitimacy of that transaction, and they do that. Have to put in extra information and send you codes to your phone. So it's been rolled out in Europe. It's a European-wide directive, and there's an increasing number of banks who are requesting these additional checks. Everyone's probably seen this already. So you get sent a one-time PIN to your smartphone, and that's PSD2 in action. I had to do it yesterday. I was even trying to actually pay someone from my account to send something via PayPal, and I had to do that. So people are getting used to it, I think. It's a good thing. It's all online payment is good. I suppose if you think back a few years ago when people really weren't used to paying for things online, there was a lot of caution about it. Now everyone just waves their phone around, so people getting on the bus and paying by phone, and everything paying by phone. So it's a way of sort of tightening up on some of the online transactions. With regards to accommodation, if someone makes a booking and it's on your website, you own that transaction start to finish, and that's sort of more straightforward than if a booking's made on a third-party site such as an OTA. But a payment is requested by the hotel later, that's where it starts to get a bit more complicated. So if it's all within a single transaction between you and the guest, that's fairly straightforward. So if you're using third parties, then it gets a bit more complicated. So if it's like that, and the guest is reserving, but the payment's requested later, the guest enters at the time of booking the details on the travel agency website, and they will validate the card with the bank, and the bank will approve that transaction between the agency and the guest. But when the hotel wants to collect the deposit or the charge for that room, and they try and use the card details that are provided by the travel agency, the bank sees this as a different merchant. And that's where things can get complicated, and they might request additional security checks. So we've had quite a few things where, yeah, that's happened, and that's caused a bit of complexity across the industry at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you just said, Ian, because I had a very interesting situation a few weeks ago. So I was in contact with a hotel directly for a stay for a specific date, but I did not see any rooms available anymore on their website. So I had the conversation by mail, and then they said to me that they still had a room available, but to guarantee the stay, I needed to provide them with my card details yes, that's the truth. I had to provide them with my card details by mail. And I said to them, well, that's of course where I step in, because I have the knowledge now from my role within Worldline. So I said, hey, I'm working for Worldline. This and this is happening. I don't feel comfortable with sharing my card details to you. I think it's a good time that we start talking about a solution to this. And I also said, I can guarantee you that I will come to your hotel. So please make a guarantee for my reservation, but I'm not sharing any of my card details. And they banned it. They approved. So the reservation is in place, but it was a quite specific and interesting situation. And yes, so I'm now in conversations with the hotel for a solution to this.
There's quite a good opportunity there. I mean,
Yeah.
even without being in the industry, I'd be very cautious about sending all of my payment card details via email or, well, any method really, whether WhatsApp or text. And if I have to do that, then I'd probably send different things via different methods. But I'd much rather just do it all in one integrated method.
No.
Yeah, because that hotel could have easily lost your booking, Kimberley, couldn't it? Because you'd, as Ian says, most of us will be immediately think of red flags. Then I'm being asked to put all my card details in an email. That is really dangerous, and it's a no-no these days. So in that case, what the hotel could have done, if they'd had a proper system in place, is send you an email with an encrypted link, a button in it, couldn't they? A payment button,
yeah,
which would have been just as easy, much easier actually for the guest, and accomplish the same thing for the hotel.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's something that people should look out for in a payment system, is a way that you can just send an email and you can embed the link within your regular guest communication. So your booking, your welcome email, or your sort of 7 days in advance email, or sort of thing. And you send the link out to the guest and they can just log into your system and make the payment there. I mean, that's secure, it's simple, it's easy, and that's direct then between the hotel and the guest. So that sort of gets around the issues with the PSD2. So yeah, that's certainly what they should be doing, and not asking for unsecure email details.
No,
Exactly.
and maybe what you're also seeing here, and that's to put it in perspective, what is happening now and what you are really expected to do because of the PSD2 legislation is to transfer everything that's normally happening online or offline in the hotel reception, or when you are manually just pre-authorizing the card details without the card being present in the hotel. What we are all familiar with in the traditional way of working is to really just switch this to an online environment, where, as we just discussed, like you can send your guest a payment link, but you can also request an authorization via this payment link. So it really depends on the way you want to work with your guests. And then what you can do is you just request them via the payment link in a personalized text. Hey, I want you to guarantee your pay or your stay by paying, or I want you to guarantee your stay by doing now an authorization on your card. We will transfer this into a direct payment at a later stage.
Okay, thanks, Kimberley. And
welcome.
Ian was explaining earlier about PSD2 and the complexities and how the industry is adapting to that. Can you explain to us a bit about tokenization and how that's working, and how that helps businesses to cope with PSD2?
Yeah, so I think when we start with an example on tokenization, let's say that one of your guests makes a reservation on the website of your hotel and he leaves his card details in a secure payment environment. Then after he finalizes the authorization or the payment, his card details will be safely stored in a tokenized or encrypted way to use later on. And this means that the token cannot be used later on by the cardholder or the guest, but the token can be used later on by the hotel. And what the hotel can do with the token is, without a new interference from the guest, is maybe perform a top-up, a late show, a no-show, a late cancellation, a late checkout, or any cross-sell or top-up thing. So it really depends on the situation you're in with your guest. And I think that it's a very efficient way of working. And I think there's also a big advantage on working with tokens, mainly for the hoteliers, because when the guest leaves his card details at the beginning of the process, he only needs to offer his card details once. They're safely stored. They can be used later on. But for all the additionality, so all the new charges, which are done by the hotel and not by the guest will hardly notice that he's spending money. So what you really want in the guest experience is that payments are not too conspicuous. So they are crucial because you want to earn money as a hotelier, but you don't want your guests to really notice that they're spending money. Why am I saying this? We had the same switch when we went from cash payments to digital payments, because when you pay with cash, you really see the money you're spending. When you pay with a card, you see it, but it's not that obvious than when you do it with cash. And that's the same what we're now seeing with tokenization. Guests have no clue, we can say, that they're spending money. So there's a bigger chance of increasing your revenues as a hotelier.
And I think that sort of spending without really thinking about it comes back to when you're charging guests as well. Because if they've already paid for some or all of their stay before they get there, they know what's in their bank balance, so they might be more tempted to spend at the bar or spend something extra. If you're charging them £500 when they check in, then immediately they're thinking, you know, okay, they've paid for the stay, but they're sort of seeing that, feeling that go out of their bank balance. Whereas if that's already taken care of, I think they're going to be more willing to sort of relax and enjoy themselves and spend more.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all, again, about, as we were saying earlier, making it as easy as possible to pay for things, isn't it? And as removing all the friction, and then they're more likely to buy an extra drink, but do an extra spa treatment or whatever it is, have another meal at your hotel. So it just encourages that spend and helps your business.
Yep.
Frictionless spending, I think you've just come up with a term there. I think that's what we all want.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And
yeah.
I think there's also, we're just moving towards a world when we are having a different way of communicating with our guests. And also when it comes to payments, they're all used, your guests are used in a traditional way that they make a reservation and then pay on the day of arrival. Because of the PSD2 legislation, I normally advise our hotel customers to really think about doing prepayment so that they have a real guarantee that the guest will come to the hotel. And that maybe feels like it's less hospitality wise towards the guest, but in the end, it will give you more comfort feeling, a better peace of mind. And it's just a new way of working to which the guests, they need to adapt because it will happen more often towards the future.
Yes, that's right. And Ian, you mentioned earlier about deposits being one of those first payment touch points. Can you say a bit more about that and what accommodation businesses need to bear in mind?
Yeah, and I think just picking up on something Kimberley was saying, I think that the expectation of paying deposits is something that people are seeing more across hospitality, in restaurants and stuff like that, which I'll touch on in a sec. But hey, so with accommodation, how and when the guest pays initially depends really on what website they're using and the policies in place, and potentially whether they're using a third party, an OTA website. So like I said before, if the payment is, that relationship is direct between the property and the guest, then that's more straightforward. The guest is charged as per the hotel's deposit policy. And if that's an integrated solution in the PMS, then that can be taken automatically as and when it becomes due, if you've got tiered policy, etc. It's a bit more complicated if you're using a third party, because that depends on the T's and C's that you have and with the OTA. So if they manage payments directly with the guest, then they will charge the guest at the time of booking, or they'll tell the guest when they're going to take the payments, and they'll do that. And then as far as the guest is concerned, everything's been paid to the agency, and then the hotel has to retrieve that money from the agency as defined with their agreement with them. So there's a bit less clarity involved in that. And then if the travel agency isn't managing the payments, then the hotel has to collect the money directly from the guest using the payment details that they've been sent. So we've got sort of three scenarios there, I suppose, as to how the deposits are handled. In terms of setting those, I think it's a guest is more likely to book if they don't need to pay anything up front. But also they're a less secure guest. If they haven't got any skin in the game, then it's easier for them to cancel. So you need to be conscious of setting deposits as to balancing in attracting people with a rate where they don't have to pay up front, and something where you can secure the booking. And so think about your pricing, I would say, so that if you are offering a fully flexible rate, then maybe charge that at a higher rate and offer a lower price on non-refundable bookings, but make sure your T's and C's are in place so that you can keep that deposit payment, and that you've got that money in place to be able to keep if you need it. If you're saying you're going to take a deposit, make sure you do take a deposit if that's what you're able to do. And we saw last year, post-COVID, lots of what was called spread booking going on, where people were booking lots of different accommodation across the country. So they'll book a few hotels and decide which one they're going to go to, or they might get the chance to go abroad and then they'll cancel all the others. And for us in the industry, I mean, that's a terrible thing to be doing. But for consumers, some people saw that as a great way of making sure they're at least going somewhere. But if you're charging a deposit, then you can try and deter that a little bit, because people do at least have to put some money up front when they're making that booking. And it was something that I've seen on social media around restaurants quite a lot recently as well, where people have booked, 10 table for 10 and then just cancelled. And I think the solution for that is always, well, charge a deposit, and at least makes people think that they have to be a bit more committed before they can fill your diary with a booking that they don't necessarily expect to fill.
I fully agree to what you're saying, yeah, because otherwise you will just lose money, and that's really a shame, and it's not needed.
Yeah, it doesn't help anyone. It also means that other consumers are missing out. If you've got people booking your rooms or your tables, but they're taking up the space that other people would want to go to, and then all of a sudden they don't turn up. I think it's a sad state of affairs, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And in the B&B Association, we've always advised people to take a deposit. Yes, it does go against what we were saying in terms of friction. It's giving an extra piece of friction. And the OTAs will always try and persuade you to give very low deposits or no deposit. But as a balance, to protect your business and to have that that confidence that they can pay and will have made a commitment, that it's very, very important.
I don't think it necessarily has to make you less competitive compared to others. You just need to think about, well, what are your rates and what are the restrictions on them? Ultimately, you need to make sure you're getting something for your bookings, and you've got a deposit policy that's set up so that if someone does cancel, and people do genuinely need to cancel, so that you can at least get something for that booking if you can't resell.
Exactly, yes. Yes, and people, as you say, are used to it and understand it. And they're used to now the flexible, the different rates, flexible rate that costs more, and the non-refundable rate, which is the cheapest rate. They're getting more used to it because all bigger hotel groups operate in that way. Independents, maybe not so much, but they could do.
But I think there's lots to learn. There's lots to learn there around smart pricing from the larger hotel groups. I mean, they've got the money to practice these things, but it's certainly not impossible. We talked about technology earlier. The technology is there to allow you to have different prices on different channels, flex your prices based on supply and demand and your room availability. So we kind of should be taking ideas from the big players because they're doing quite well out of it.
Yeah, and Ian, just taking a step back and looking at payments systems in general, what should a hotel think about when considering payments and a payment solution, would you say?
I suppose there's so many options. We've talked about all the variables today, that they need to look at what's right for them and what's right for their business. And we're not just talking about hotels and B&Bs, we're talking about self-catering properties. It could be a single unit, it could be multiple units, it could be a pub with rooms. So there's no sort of one size fits all solution, I suppose. So you want something that's flexible. Two things I think to bear in mind are probably cash flow and automation. So with cash flow, keeping control of your cash is key to running any business. And if you know sort of where your cash is and when it's coming in, then that allows you to manage your spending how you want to do it in your investment decisions. So there's different sort of ways that can be managed as to whether if you've got your own merchant account, or if you're using another merchant account, or you're taking more bookings via OTAs and they're taking the money up front, or they're not taking the money and you're charging it later. So you can sort of manage that a little bit by looking at your mix of direct and online travel agent bookings. And there are ways of increasing your direct bookings if that's what you want to do, but equally, you know, OTA bookings can be a useful source for you as well. I guess making sure you've got your prices in place a long time in advance helps with that. So it's always better if you can to control your payments yourself, and then you can control when you receive your cash, and importantly when you receive your refunds. We talked about COVID, and it's interesting how COVID sort of it is receding a little, I guess, in people's consciousness. But one of the big impacts that we had then was all of the refunds and hotels not having the cash for bookings that they've taken. So guests were coming to them and asking for refunds, and they simply didn't have the cash because they hadn't collected it. You know, leaving the guests distraught and chasing refunds when the hotel didn't have it to refund. So if you do hold the cash, bear in mind you might have to repay that if there's a cancellation, but the more control you've got over your cash flow, the better, really. And then things you want to save as much time as you can. So automation. So there's plenty of options there. Ensure your payment solution gives you the flexibility that you need to let your guests pay how and when they want, something that Kimberley raised earlier, and look at whether it allows you to automate all of those touch points to collect your deposit, collect an additional deposit, and to reconcile all of that. So when guests check out, does it integrate with your back end and accounting systems? So that the system is doing as much for you as possible. So you're not having to remember to do all these things. So I think having a system that's got as much automation as possible, that gives you the freedom to do what you do best, because looking after guests is probably the key thing to consider.
Yeah, thanks for that. And Kimberley, what do you think the key takeaways are for hoteliers if they want to move to a full integration of their hotel systems and payments?
Yeah, so I think that the most important thing to bear in mind is that you need to take things easy. So it's quite, you know, a shift from having a standalone solution in your hotel, maybe have one booking engine from one supplier, PMS from another supplier, your terminals not connected to the PMS. When you are then transferring into a full integration of all these systems, when they really start communicating with each other, it's very important to just take things easy, to take your time for the switch, to start a dialogue with a partner that has the right knowledge on this, that can advise you correctly, that is open and transparent on pricing, on functionalities, on do's and don'ts. Because in the end, you know, you're very good in your hospitality business. You're very good in delivering the best possible service to your guests, and we are very good in our well, fields, I would say. So eviivo is very good in the booking engine, in the property management system. We're very good in payments. So if you're really considering to move into a full integration, it's just very important that you find a partner which brings you comfort, that can take you by the hand and really can just guide you through all the different phases, I would say, so that you can, well, I will not say that you need to or can sit back, but that's something you want to look for, because we need to take care of you in this process.
Yeah, I agree, Kimberley. I think it's about finding the right partners to take care of the complicated bits. I mean, we've been building our system over 14 years or so. You know, as the industry has changed massively in that, and we've changed with it. I know Worldline have done the same. So you don't want to be worrying about how it works. It's a bit like when you buy a car, you don't need to know what works underneath the bonnet. You want to be comfortable and it get you to A to B. You want all of those bits to be right for you. And I think it's kind of trusting your partners to deliver, because they're the experts in the areas that they're.
Yeah, that's right. Trust your partners and use good partners and suppliers, and that's always one of the key answers in business. Go for it, working with good partners, and it'll complement your own business and help you increase sales and increase profits, which is what it's all about at the end of the day. Well, I'm keeping an eye on the time because we're heading towards the close of the webinar, but we thank you for all the participants for posting questions as we've been going on. We have not got time to probably address all of them, but we're here now, but we will have your questions and we'll read them, and any that we can't respond to, we'll try and respond either directly to you or in general terms on the follow-up email or viewing page of this webinar. But was there one, Ian, that you spotted that came in that you were wanting to answer?
Someone I saw was asking about what's the sort of the general policy for hospitality businesses. Is it full payment on arrival? Is it deposits? And it's really what suits your business, I think. As long as I think that we would always encourage there to be some element of deposit for all of those reasons that I said earlier about sort of securing that bucket. But I think there's not sort of, if you're doing it one way, you're not necessarily doing it right or wrong. I don't think it's everyone is requesting full payment on arrival now. I don't think that's the case. Or payment in advance. I think it's probably worth having a look at what others are doing, both the big players and individuals in your area, so you're sort of remaining competitive. But I think having the options to do that. So I think sort of whatever you're doing needs to work for your business, not just because that's what everyone else does. But I would say I think it seems a little outdated to not be collecting. The main thing to do is make sure that people can pay online securely. I think that's the main thing. Don't make them send a check or turn up with a pocket full of cash or anything like that. I mean, I live in London. I never think about taking cash anywhere with me. If I go on holiday and somebody needs me to pay cash, that's a 30-mile round trip to find a cash point kind of thing. So, and expecting people to turn up with large amounts of money to pay deposits that you then get back. So it's not so much what your policy is, but it's making sure that people can do that online in the middle of the night if they want, on their phone if they want. Those are the ways that people want to be able to pay these days.
Yeah, it's again back to making it as easy as possible for guests, and then that helps you by increasing your sales. And one other question was if people sign up to a payment processor like Worldline, do they then also have to have separate contracts with the card companies like Visa and MasterCard, or will that all be taken care of by Worldline?
Yeah, so I would say, like in our world, we work with two different definitions. So on one hand, you have the collecting payment methods, and these are really the ones with which you sign a direct contract with us. And I would say that's like a very long list with payment methods, but there are also distributing payment methods, which is just a small list. And these are payment methods for which you sign a contract directly with the payment method. Then after signing, they provide you with a contract number, and we can then activate it for you on our side, so in our solutions. But it really depends on the type of payment method. But I would say that for the most frequently used ones, it's on a direct contract. But you all know, for instance, American Express, there the process is completely different because you sign a contract with them for the acceptors on our side. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. And
another thing that we see a lot recently is about QR codes. And a question is about, will we be able to handle payments by QR codes, for instance, printing something on a menu or on an arrival card in the hotel?
Yeah. Yes. So also that is possible. I think it really depends on the use case, but I can give you a small example. So for the Asian market, we have the payment methods Alipay and WeChat Pay. These are wallet payments. On the payment terminal screen, a QR code pops up on the moment you start a payment on the folio and you send it to the integrated payment terminal. Then if there's a user or a guest that has the app from Alipay or WeChat Pay, he can scan the QR code and make the payment through the app on his mobile device. So yes, there are a lot of different use cases, but this is a specific one and there are QR codes, they work.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
And with all these things, there's a lot of technical questions, and this webinar, we've not tried to answer and drill down into very technical detail, because that's up to you to contact payment providers or PMS and ask questions and have a demo and get into the technicalities later. What we've tried to do today in the webinar is talk about the issues in principle and in a way that's easy to understand for accommodation providers, and get over the benefits for accommodation providers and other hospitality businesses for having an integrated payment system and payment provider that can allow you to cope with that customer journey, all those payment points that we started with at the beginning, and cope with that and help you run your business, which is what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important element, isn't it, of the whole thing. If you think about, you've got what your rooms look like, how you sell them online, what food you serve, and the payments thing is perhaps something that's a little bit more scary for lots of people, and perhaps gets pushed aside a little bit. But I would say, yeah, come and talk to us and to Worldline and sort of find out if you've got questions about, well, how does that actually work? Because it's one of those things that sort of looks simple and you can understand it simply, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, and there's lots of terminology, and there's lots of changes constantly going on.
Maybe one thing to add here, because I saw a few questions coming in. One of them is from Andy Rose, and I see some others as well in the chat. Is it maybe an idea that we come back to you after the webinar? Because Andy, for instance, I really like your question, but I cannot answer it right away. So if you are okay with it, I will come back to you after.
That's great. Thanks, Kimberly. Yes,
welcome.
That's a good way of addressing that. And as Ian said, there's a lot of tech behind the scenes in payments and in PMS technology, but the whole point of it is it should be behind the scenes and make things easy for you to run your business and make things easy for your guests to pay you. And that's what it's all about. Yes, there's a lot of complicated tech, but hopefully you don't need to understand all of it. You need to just sign up with a good provider, and that will be organized, and that will make life easier for you running your business and make life easier for your guests paying you, and encourage them to pay you more and help your sales and your profits.
Yeah, agreed.
So we've reached the end of our time now, and I hope you found it useful, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. As I said, that this webinar is going to be available to view again. We'll send a link to everyone who's registered today, so you'll get that. You'll be able to see it on the Hospitality Today website, and we'll communicate it by social media, Twitter and other means. So you'll have a chance to see it again, and also we'll follow up with contact links for Worldline and eviivo for you to take it forward to the next stage. And so thank you again. Thank you particularly to Kimberley from Worldline and to Ian from eviivo for joining us today and giving their time.
Likewise.
Thank you.
And for all of you for joining us, and good luck with your businesses, and best wishes for a very, very good and profitable season for 2022. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you
Goodbye.
all. Have a great day. Bye-bye.